Close your eyes and imagine stepping into a grand atrium bathed in the warm glow of oil lamps, their flickering flames casting shadows on frescoed walls. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and roasted meats. Laughter echoes through marble corridors as silk-clad guests recline on gold-trimmed couches, sipping spiced wine from delicate goblets. Before them lies a banquet table that defies belief, overflowing with culinary curiosities that stretch the limits of the imaginable. There are flamingo tongues, plucked from exotic birds brought in from far-off provinces, their texture tender and delicately seasoned. Nearby, a platter of dormice, stuffed with minced pork, herbs, and pine nuts, rests beneath a glaze of honey and poppy seeds. Even jellyfish, an odd delicacy by modern standards, are prepared with saffron and vinegar, their gelatinous forms glistening under the torchlight. This isn't the set of a fantasy film, or the pages of a surreal novel. This is history. Real, recorded, and revered. This was the dining world of Rome's elite, a place where food was far more than sustenance. It was a symbol of status, power, and reach. These banquets weren't just meals, they were performances, messages, and sometimes even political maneuvers. But what did these extravagant feasts actually taste like? Were they delicious, grotesque, or something in between? And more importantly, what can these ancient dishes tell us about the society that created them, the values they held, the world they conquered, and the empire they built? Welcome to a journey unlike any other, a journey not just across centuries, but across cultures, classes, and kitchens. Here, food is no longer merely nourishment. In ancient Rome, it was currency, theater, spectacle. Every bite told a story of conquest, every course was a declaration of power. To dine among the Roman elite was to step into a world where politics simmered alongside stews, and where status was measured not in titles, but in the rarity of your ingredients and the audacity of your recipes. Today, we're peeling back the velvet curtain to reveal what truly lay behind the opulent facades of Roman banquets. Forget the humble images of peasants with bowls of barley or crusts of bread dipped in olive oil. This isn't that. We're diving fork first into the heart of culinary extravagance, into a realm where peacock brains were prized, where sauces fermented for months were poured liberally, and where presentation was as important as flavor. This was not food as we know it. This was ritual, this was drama, this was status on a silver platter. If you've ever pondered how the rich feasted while the empire expanded, or how the decadent recipes of the past evolved into the foundations of Mediterranean cuisine as we know it, then you've just found your seat at the table. Because the Roman dining room wasn't just a place to eat, it was a mirror reflecting the soul of a civilization, one dish at a time. To truly grasp the essence of elite Roman dining, we must begin with the beating heart of their culinary culture, the convivium. This was no ordinary dinner party. The convivium was a meticulously staged performance, a carefully choreographed ritual where food was both centerpiece and subtext. It was the ultimate social theater, where every bite, every ingredient, and every gesture was loaded with meaning. At its core, the convivium was about spectacle. Not just about feeding the body, but feeding the ego. Guests reclined on lavish couches arranged in a triclinium, engaging in philosophical debate, poetic recitation, and subtle games of one-upmanship, all while servants moved like silent shadows, bearing silver platters brimming with culinary marvels. This was where wealth whispered in the aroma of cinnamon from distant Ceylon, and power echoed in the slurp of oysters harvested from the cold, briny coasts of Britannia. Exoticism equaled esteem. To serve dishes made from ingredients that had traveled thousands of miles was to proclaim one's reach across the empire. Saffron, pepper, and garum, a fermented fish sauce as pungent as it was prized, were flaunted as luxuries. Wines were chosen not for their flavor alone, but for their age, their origin, their story. A host who poured wine older than the guests themselves wasn't just generous, he was making a statement. I command time, trade, and taste. The convivium was a language of status, and every course was a sentence written in spice and sauce. To be invited was an honor, to host one successfully was an art. And in a world where status was everything, the banquet table became a battlefield of prestige. Now, let's dive into the menus. If you were to pick up Apicius, the ancient Roman cookbook, it wouldn't exactly read like a typical recipe book you might find today. No, this wasn't just about how to prepare food, it was more like a luxury catalogue, showcasing the finest and most extravagant dishes that money could buy. Think roasted peacock, its golden feathers carefully arranged on the platter to catch the light. Think sea urchins, plucked from the Mediterranean depths, their spiny exteriors a symbol of the wealth required to obtain them. And yes, dormice. Plump little creatures stuffed with a fragrant mixture of herbs, dipped in honey, and roasted to perfection, a delicacy that would make even the most adventurous modern eater raise an eyebrow. Each dish wasn't just food, it was a statement. "I can afford what you can't even imagine," it boldly declared. To serve a peacock, or a dish of sea urchins, wasn't simply about indulging in rare flavors, it was about proclaiming power. The ingredients were the symbols of an empire that stretched across continents, each spice, each garnish, each animal a testament to the vastness of Roman influence and the privilege of those who could enjoy such opulence. But Roman dining wasn't all about indulgence for indulgence's sake. There was an art to it, a rhythm, a ritual. Banquets were carefully structured in 3 distinct acts, like a play. First, the gustatio, appetizers designed to whet the appetite and tease the senses. Then came the prima mensa, the main courses, where the real spectacle occurred, with meats, sauces, and the grandest dishes on full display. Finally, the secunda mensa, the desserts, which were often as elaborate as the main courses themselves, featuring fruits, pastries, and sweets that could rival today's finest patisseries. And throughout each stage of the banquet, the senses were not only tantalized by food, but also by culture. Between bites, guests were entertained by performances, poetry, music, or philosophical debates. A good feast wasn't just about filling the stomach, it was a chance to stimulate the mind, engage with the arts, and reinforce social bonds. A Roman banquet was a feast for the body, the soul, and the intellect, blending food and culture in ways that we can only begin to understand. As grand and decadent as these banquets were, Roman dining wasn't merely about indulgence or satisfying one's hunger. It was about ritual, rhythm, and respect for tradition. The Romans didn't just throw together a meal, they curated an experience. Every feast followed a carefully orchestrated structure, almost like a well-rehearsed play. It began with the gustatio, a selection of appetizers designed to stimulate the appetite and prepare the senses for the indulgence to come. These weren't your average starters. They were finely crafted dishes, rich in flavor and presentation, setting the tone for what was to follow. Then came the prima mensa, the main courses, which were the centerpiece of the evening. Here, the true spectacle unfolded. The platters of roasted meats, delicacies, and the exotic treats of the empire were brought forth. It was the time to impress, to indulge, and to engage in the finest culinary displays available. And yet, even as the food dazzled, the evening wasn't solely about consumption. The third act, the secunda mensa, was the dessert course, a sweet conclusion to the feast, often served with fruits, confections, and delicacies that left guests with a lingering sense of satisfaction. But the banquet wasn't just about eating, it was an intellectual affair, too. Between bites of peacock and dormice, guests were entertained with poetry, music, and lively debates. This wasn't just a time to savor food, but also a time to savor conversation and culture. A truly good feast, by Roman standards, was one that not only filled the stomach, but also fed the mind, keeping guests engaged and stimulated long into the evening. And what about drinks, you might ask? Well, wine flowed freely at these feasts, but it wasn't the pure, potent drink we might imagine today. No, Romans diluted their wine with water, sometimes mixing it with herbs, resin, or honey to create complex flavors. Drinking wasn't a means of getting drunk. It was a test of manners and moderation. To be seen as overly intoxicated at a Roman banquet was nothing short of social suicide. A drunken host would have ruined his reputation, casting a shadow over the entire feast. For the Romans, the act of drinking was as much about sophistication and restraint as it was about taste. Culturally speaking, the Roman feast wasn't just about the food on the table. It was a microcosm of the empire itself. A Roman banquet was a reflection of the grandeur, the expanse, and the intricate social hierarchies that defined the civilization. At these lavish affairs, power and privilege were displayed in every dish, in every gesture. Slaves, often unseen but ever present, were the ones to serve the courses, moving silently through the opulent halls, ensuring that the elite guests were well fed and entertained. Meanwhile, freedmen, those who had earned or bought their liberty, hoping to make a name for themselves in Roman society, often used these feasts as an opportunity to impress their patrons. Their success or failure could be determined by how well they performed in this social theater. And then there were the women. Part of the elite, yes, but their role in these banquets was defined by strict societal expectations. While men reclined on their couches, engaged in conversation, and feasted to their heart's content, women dined seated upright. Their position at the table was far more constrained, bound by a complex web of decorum and social norms. It was a symbol of their place in Roman society, always present, always important, but never fully equal to their male counterparts. The banquet table was a stage, and the roles of those involved were written by tradition and expectation. But when we look beyond the intricacies of power dynamics and social norms, one undeniable fact stands out: food waste. The excesses of Roman banquets were staggering. We're talking about a level of waste that would boggle the mind today. A single elite feast could discard more food than an entire plebeian family would eat in a week. The sheer abundance of dishes, the vast quantities of delicacies that were paraded and then abandoned, painted a vivid picture of excess. But this wasn't mere gluttony, it was political. In a world where wealth was power, to waste food on such an unimaginable scale was a form of showing dominance. Rome's elite weren't just indulging in luxury, they were flaunting their control over nature, their ability to command global trade routes, and their military prowess in conquest. Every discarded dish was a testament to Rome's ability to overwhelm not just their enemies, but even the very resources of the earth itself. But let's not be fooled into thinking Roman cuisine was only about spectacle and shock. Beneath the layers of roasted peacock feathers and honey-drenched dormice, there was a foundation of honest, enduring dishes, recipes that didn't aim to dazzle, but to nourish, to satisfy, and to last. Take maritum, for example, a humble garlic and cheese spread, crushed together with herbs and olive oil using a mortar and pestle. It was a common dish among farmers and laborious, yet so rich in flavor and practicality that it still echoes today in the garlicky spreads of southern Europe. Or consider pulse, the hearty barley porridge that formed the backbone of the Roman diet, especially among the lower classes and soldiers. Simple, yes, but flexible and sustaining. It's a culinary ancestor to the polenta, risottos, and porridges that grace tables around the world today. These were not novelty dishes. They were the edible glue that held Roman society together. And over time, they evolved, adapted, and endured, leaving behind not just recipes, but legacies. The influence of Roman food didn't disappear with the fall of the empire. It seeped forward into history, infusing what we now recognize as staples of the Italian kitchen. The tang of fermented fish sauces like garum laid the groundwork for umami-rich condiments we see across global cuisines. Their flatbreads, cooked in wood-fired ovens and shared communally, are culinary ancestors to today's pizzas and focaccias. Roman cuisine was both an end and a beginning, a bridge between ancient tradition and modern taste. And if you ever doubted the cultural weight that Romans placed on food, look no further than Pompeii. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it didn't just bury a city, it preserved a moment in time. Archaeologists unearthed carbonized loaves of bread, frozen mid-bake, still bearing the baker's stamp. These weren't just loaves, they were identity. Proof that even 2,000 years ago, food was art, economy, craftsmanship, and legacy. A meal wasn't just nourishment, it was a name, a brand, a place in the world. To eat was to belong. And in the ruins of an empire, bread told a story that even ash and time could not erase. So now that we've peeled back the layers of ancient extravagance, let's make it personal. Imagine it. You, reclining on a velvet-draped couch under flickering oil lamps, a silver platter is placed before you. On it, a delicacy straight from the kitchens of Roman nobility, a stuffed dormouse, delicately seasoned, wrapped in grape leaves, and drizzled with honey and poppy seeds. The host, draped in embroidered togas, waits for your reaction. The room is watching. The question is, would you take a bite? Or politely pass, with a practiced smile? This isn't just about taste. It's about stepping into a moment in history, and asking yourself what you'd do. So, what's your answer? Would curiosity conquer hesitation? Or would you stick with the barley porridge and olive tapenade? We'd love to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Would you dare to dine like a Roman elite? And hey, if you're enjoying this journey through ancient kitchens and culinary customs, give this video a thumbs up. It might seem like a small thing, but every like helps serve up these delicious stories to more food history lovers around the world. Let's spread the feast, one click at a time. So what have we really uncovered tonight, beneath the golden goblets and perfumed halls of Rome? The truth is, the Roman banquet was never just about eating. It was theater. A meticulously choreographed display where every course, every ingredient, and every gesture broadcasted one thing: status. A flamingo tongue wasn't just exotic, it was a proclamation of power. A vintage wine wasn't just aged, it was a timeline of legacy. And each guest at the table wasn't just dining, they were playing a role in a social drama scripted by wealth, tradition, and influence. This wasn't nourishment. This was narrative. With every bite of honey-glazed game bird, every drop of spice-laced wine, Rome was affirming its identity, opulent, ambitious, and hungry for greatness. And the ripple effects of that obsession, they are still on our plates today. In every salty anchovy, every crisp flatbread, every tang of garlicky spread, we taste echoes of an empire. But this is just the appetizer. If you're someone who believes that food is more than fuel, if you see it as a window into culture, conflict, and creativity, then welcome. You're among friends. Because here, we don't just eat, we uncover, we explore, and we tell the stories history left on the cutting board. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Join us as we dig deeper into the kitchens of kings, the street food of revolutions, and the recipes that rewrote history. There's so much more to savor. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and remember, every meal has a story waiting to be told.